What if the cartoons you grew up with weren't the strangest ones at all? What if the real oddities slipped through the cracks, airing once, confusing everyone, then quietly vanishing? The 1980s were a creative free-for-all. Networks greenlit ideas that barely made sense, just to see what stuck. Some were bold, some were baffling, and some feel almost unreal today. These are the forgotten experiments that prove Saturday mornings were wilder than you remember. Number 15. Snorks, 1984. At first glance, this looked familiar. Too familiar. Bright colors, tiny characters, a cheerful underwater village. Everything about it felt safe, friendly, and comforting. And that was exactly the trick. Snorks debuted in 1984 as an underwater cousin to a far more famous blue franchise. The premise was simple and intentionally harmless. Small, friendly creatures live beneath the sea, working together, solving everyday problems, and learning gentle lessons about cooperation and kindness. On the surface, it was designed to feel reassuring, but one strange detail quietly changed the entire tone. Every Snork had a long tube sticking out of their head, and that tube lit up to reflect their emotions. Excited meant glowing, nervous meant dim, angry meant flashing. It was supposed to be clever, instead it felt unsettling. Those tubes turned emotions into public announcements. Feelings weren't private, they weren't internal. Every reaction was visible to everyone around them, like warning lights on a dashboard. Once you noticed it, you couldn't stop noticing it. Many kids couldn't explain why the show felt strange. They just sensed that something was off. Behind the scenes, Snorks was clearly designed to repeat an existing success rather than carve out a new identity. The animation was polished, the music was upbeat, but the world itself felt oddly hollow, like a cheerful mask stretched too tight. Number 14. The Wuzzles, 1985. The idea behind the Wuzzles sounds like something invented 5 minutes before a deadline. What if every character was two animals mashed together? That was it. That was the pitch. The Wuzzles premiered in 1985 and introduced a world populated entirely by hybrid creatures. A bee combined with an elephant, a moose mixed with a seal, a lion fused with a bumblebee. Every design was loud, rounded, and impossible to forget. From the start, the show relied almost completely on visual novelty, trusting its strange creations to do most of the work. Disney produced the series during a brief period of heavy experimentation in television animation. The goal was charm. What came out felt closer to overload. The animation leaned hard into softness, big eyes, rounded bodies, pastel colors everywhere. Everything looked like a plush toy brought to life. The world felt cheerful but also strangely artificial, like a toy shelf frozen in time. What made the Wuzzles especially odd was how quickly the idea ran out of room. Once the novelty wore off, stories repeated and conflicts stayed small. The show lasted only one season before disappearing. Today, it feels like a time capsule of 80s excess, a reminder of when cuteness was treated as the entire strategy. Number 13. Bionic 6, 1987. Bionic 6 arrived in 1987 as a superhero cartoon with all the right ingredients: a bionic family, unique powers, high-tech suits, and colorful villains. Yet, despite its promising setup, the show never quite delivered the energy expected of the genre. It lacked consistent tone, too serious for comedy, too tame for action, leaving it stranded in narrative limbo. Emotional stakes felt muted, conflicts resolved too neatly, robbing tension of urgency. Visually, however, the series stood out. Its animation, influenced by Japanese studios, featured fluid motion, weighty character movement, and a mature aesthetic uncommon in American Saturday morning fare. This visual sophistication clashed with its simplistic writing, creating a dissonance that confused its audience. Children anticipating explosive heroics were met with restraint. Adults unaware of its existence missed its subtle ambition. Bionic 6 became an odd hybrid, stylish yet underwhelming, ambitious yet hesitant, struggling to find its identity in a crowded market. Number 12. Jace and the Wheeled Warriors, 1985. Debuting in 1985, Jace and the Wheeled Warriors presented a cosmic adventure unlike any other. A young hero, Jace, searching for his scientist father while battling intelligent, malevolent plant creatures known as the Monster Minds. Blending sci-fi and fantasy, the show layered ecological and philosophical themes beneath its Saturday morning sheen. Machines versus organic life, creation versus corruption. Its striking character and vehicle designs, coupled with a dramatic synth-heavy score, lent it an operatic grandeur rare in children's animation. Yet the series' boldest and most frustrating trait was its lack of resolution. Cancelled before its story could conclude, it left generations of viewers with unanswered questions. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, Jace gained a cult following. It felt bigger than its 65 episodes, hinting at a mythos never fully explored. Today, it endures as a haunting example of ambition outpacing its era's commercial limitations, a beautiful, unfinished dream. Number 11. The Raccoons, 1985. At first glance, The Raccoons appears deceptively gentle, a Canadian cartoon with soft colors, forest settings, and calm dialogue. But beneath its pastoral surface lies a surprisingly nuanced narrative about environmentalism, capitalism, and loss. Centered on three raccoons defending their home from the greedy aardvark Cyril Sneer, the show avoided slapstick in favor of slow-building tension and emotional realism. Cyril wasn't a cartoonish villain, but a complex figure, smug yet vulnerable, profit-driven yet capable of change. This maturity, paired with lingering shots and atmospheric storytelling, gave the series an almost melancholic tone uncommon in 1980s children's TV. Kids drawn to action might have drifted away, but those who stayed found subtle drama, moral ambiguity, and quiet resilience. Its iconic theme song, "Run With Us," became an anthem of hope, contrasting the show's often somber themes. The Raccoons didn't shout, it whispered, and in doing so, it carved a quiet legacy as a thoughtful, understated gem that trusted its audience to feel, reflect, and care. Number 10. Turbo Teen, 1984. Turbo Teen delivered one of animation's most bizarre premises with deadpan seriousness. Teenager Brett Matthews transforms into a red sports car whenever exposed to heat and reverts when cooled. The result was less superhero fantasy and more body horror played for adventure. The transformation sequences, limbs stretching into axles, flesh melting into metal, were unsettlingly literal, leaving a lasting impression on young viewers. Despite its outlandish core concept, the show framed Brett's condition as a tragic accident, not a gag, adding emotional weight rarely seen in similar series. Episodes followed standard crime-solving plots, but none could overshadow the sheer strangeness of a boy whose body betrayed him with temperature changes. Lasting only 13 episodes, Turbo Teen became a cult curiosity, a symbol of 1980s animation's willingness to greenlight almost anything if it could sell toys. Yet its legacy isn't just absurdity, it's a reminder of how earnestly children's television sometimes embraced the uncanny, trusting kids to accept the surreal without explanation. Number 9. Rubik, the Amazing Cube, 1983. When a puzzle becomes a character, things get strange fast. Rubik, the Amazing Cube, premiered in 1983 at the height of a global puzzle craze. The idea was simple: take the most popular toy on the planet and give it a face, a voice, and magical abilities. What followed was one of the oddest toy-based cartoons ever made. Rubik wasn't just a cube. He floated, he spoke, he glowed, and he helped a group of kids solve problems using powers that were never clearly defined. Sometimes he moved objects, sometimes he vanished, sometimes he simply reacted emotionally while everyone else fixed the situation. The tone shifted constantly, one moment playful, the next oddly tense. The cube's face appeared and disappeared between scenes, making him feel less like a character and more like an object that shouldn't be alive. What made the show stand out was its atmosphere. The animation was bright, but the concept carried an eerie edge. A toy that watches, reacts, thinks. The series ran for only one season. The craze faded. The cube went back to being just a cube. Today, Rubik the Amazing Cube feels like a perfect snapshot of 80s marketing logic. If kids love it, animate it, no matter how strange the result feels once it starts talking back. Number 8. The Mighty Orbots, 1984. The Mighty Orbots looked like the future. Debuting in 1984, the show combined American cartoon energy with sleek animation inspired by Japanese studios. Every movement was smoother, every action scene more detailed. Compared to its peers, it felt advanced. The premise followed a young scientist and his team of 6 robots, each with a unique personality and ability. When danger appeared, they merged into one towering hero. A familiar idea, but the execution was different. The problem was tone. One moment, the show aimed for epic space drama. The next, it dropped into slapstick humor. Jokes undercut tension. Serious moments dissolved into silliness. viewers never quite knew how to take it. Behind the scenes, legal issues added to its instability. Name disputes and production complications limited its lifespan. Only 13 episodes were produced before it vanished. What remains today is admiration mixed with frustration. The animation still impresses, the designs still stand out, but the identity never fully formed. The Mighty Orbots feels like a prototype, a glimpse at what cartoons could become, trapped inside what cartoons were expected to be. And sometimes that tension is what makes a show unforgettable. Number 7. The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers. 1986. This one felt different from the first frame. The Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers premiered in 1986 and immediately broke the usual Saturday morning rhythm. The music was moodier, the characters were quieter, the world felt worn, not shiny. Set in a distant future, the series followed a small team tasked with maintaining order on the edge of space. Instead of bright heroics, it leaned into isolation, responsibility, and consequence. The show trusted its audience. It didn't explain everything. It didn't rush emotional beats. Characters struggled. Mistakes mattered. Victories came at a cost. What truly set it apart was atmosphere. Synth-driven music, shadowed environments, a sense that space was vast and uncaring. For kids expecting constant action, it could feel slow. For those who connected, it felt mature in a way few cartoons dared to be. Galaxy Rangers didn't dominate ratings, but it earned loyalty. Today, it's remembered as one of the rare 80s cartoons that treated its world seriously. It didn't shout for attention. It waited for viewers willing to listen. Number 6. The Centurions. 1986. The Centurions answered a strange question. What if power didn't come from within, but arrived from the sky? Premiering in 1986, the show followed 3 heroes equipped with advanced suits that received upgrades delivered remotely. When danger appeared, gear would launch from orbit and attach itself mid-action. The concept was visually striking, armor locking into place, tools activating instantly. It felt intense and mechanical. What made it strange was how impersonal it felt. Power wasn't earned, it was assigned, controlled, monitored. The heroes themselves were calm, almost clinical. Emotion rarely took center stage. The focus stayed on equipment, coordination, and response. For some viewers, that made it thrilling. For others, distant. The Centurions lasted 2 seasons, long enough to be remembered, short enough to feel unfinished. Today, it stands as a reminder of a time when cartoons experimented with structure as much as spectacle, when heroes didn't just act, they received instructions. And that subtle shift made all the difference. Number 5. Inhumanoids. 1986. Some cartoons try to be friendly. This one never pretended to be. Inhumanoids debuted in 1986 and immediately felt wrong for its time slot. The animation was darker, the pacing slower, the creatures massive, strange, and unsettling. This was not comfort viewing. The premise centered on ancient beings awakened beneath the surface of the earth. These entities weren't playful or misunderstood. They were overwhelming forces. Their presence alone reshaped environments and terrified everyone around them. What shocked viewers wasn't just the designs, it was the tone. Characters reacted with fear. Consequences lasted. Damage didn't reset by the next episode. The show treated danger seriously. That alone made it stand out. Many parents quickly noticed it felt heavier than other cartoons airing alongside it. Despite strong ambition, Inhumanoids struggled. Its intensity limited its reach. It lasted only 1 season. Today, it's remembered as a bold experiment, a reminder that the 80s briefly allowed animated stories to push far past comfort. It didn't fail because it was poorly made. It failed because it dared to be unsettling when most cartoons promised safety. Number 4. Spiral Zone. 1987. This one feels like it wandered in from another decade. Spiral Zone premiered in 1987 and presented a bleak future, a world slowly overtaken by invisible areas that altered behavior, perception, and loyalty. Step inside, and you weren't the same person anymore. The heroes weren't cheerful. They were tired, focused, disciplined. Their mission felt endless. Progress came slowly, if at all. The show avoided bright colors. It favored shadows and muted tones. Even the music carried a sense of restraint. For kids expecting clear victories, Spiral Zone felt heavy. But for those who connected, it felt real in a way few cartoons attempted. It lasted 1 season. Too serious for mass appeal, too strange to ignore. Today, Spiral Zone feels ahead of its time. A reminder that animation once experimented with quiet tension instead of constant noise. Number 3. The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll, early 1980s. This revival shocked audiences not by being loud, but by being strange. When Mighty Mouse returned in the early 1980s, the tone shifted dramatically. Humor became surreal, pacing slowed, jokes lingered uncomfortably long. Characters broke expectations, familiar personalities felt altered. The show leaned into awkward pauses and offbeat reactions. For some viewers it felt brilliant, for others confusing. This version didn't want to be comforting. It wanted to experiment, and that made it divisive. It didn't last long, but it left an impression. Today it's remembered as a reminder that revivals can be risky. Change too little and nothing matters. Change too much and everything feels unfamiliar. Number 2. The Gary Coleman Show, 1982. This one feels surreal even now. The Gary Coleman Show premiered in 1982 and turned a real child star into an animated helper, guiding others through everyday problems. The concept blurred reality and fiction in a way that felt uncomfortable. The character looked like Gary Coleman, sounded like him, acted like a softer version of his public image. Kids didn't quite know how to react. Was this a character or the person himself? The show aimed to inspire. Instead, it confused. It lasted 13 episodes and quietly disappeared. Today, it stands as one of the clearest examples of 80s celebrity-driven animation. Proof that popularity alone couldn't carry a concept this strange. Number 1. Blackstar, 1981. Blackstar feels like a cartoon that slipped in from another reality. Premiering in 1981, the series followed an astronaut named John Blackstar, who crash lands on a bizarre alien world filled with magic, monsters, and ancient technology. What made it strange wasn't just the fantasy setting, it was how seriously the show treated it. Blackstar blended science fiction and fantasy at a time when most cartoons kept those worlds separate. Laser weapons existed alongside spells. High technology shared space with sorcery. The rules of the world were never fully explained, which gave the show a dreamlike, almost unstable tone. Visually, it stood apart. Characters were taller, sharper, and more exaggerated than typical Saturday morning heroes. Villains weren't playful. They were imposing, quiet, patient. The main antagonist didn't rush. He waited. The pacing was slower than most kids were used to. Episodes lingered on atmosphere instead of action. For some viewers, that made it boring. For others, it made it unforgettable. Blackstar lasted only one season before disappearing, but its influence quietly lived on. Many of its ideas and designs would later resurface in far more famous franchises. Today, Blackstar is remembered as a strange experiment that arrived too early, a cartoon that didn't fit the era it aired in. And sometimes, that's exactly what makes something truly haunting long after it's gone. These cartoons prove one thing: the 80s weren't safe. They were experimental, messy, fearless. Studios threw ideas at the screen and waited to see what stuck. Some vanished, some confused, some quietly shaped the future, but all of them remind us that creativity once took real risks. So which of these surprised you the most? Which one do you remember seeing and questioning? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more forgotten stories, and remember, sometimes the strangest ideas leave the longest shadows.